Hello students, welcome to Unit 13.3, the trait perspective of personality.
Trait researchers attempt to define personality in terms of stable and enduring behavior patterns. So what is a trait? A trait is a relatively stable and enduring tendency to behave in a particular way. So if you're typically outgoing or loyal or optimistic, and that's a behavior pattern that tends to persist over time, then that would be a personality trait. So according to trait theory, an approach which is an approach for analyzing the structure of personality by measuring, identifying, and classifying similarities and differences in personality characteristics or traits, we use something very similar to factor analysis in order to analyze and evaluate people's specific personality traits. We do this by utilizing what are called personality inventories. And a personality inventory is a questionnaire, often with true or false or using a Likert scale, on which people respond to items designed to gauge a wide range of feelings and behaviors used to assess select personality traits. So if you look at the personality inventory here on the right, you'll see there are different many personality traits. There's anxiety, there's depression, there's warmth, vulnerability. We see trust here, altruism. We have self-discipline. And then we have raw quantitative scores that are found in two different studies, which show personality traits. So we see here that if a particular individual has a high sense of self-discipline or a low sense of self-discipline, then they also might be more prone to be impulsive, or they might have a diminished sense of altruism or a diminished sense of competence, for example. And so that would be an example of a factor, those two personality traits relating to one another. Not quite sure what happened with this slide. We'll try to make the best of it. But the most popular personality inventory is called the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, if you can see that. And also known as the MMPI, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. And originally, this test was designed as an intelligence test, and then it was modified to be a test for psychological disorders. But researchers started to realize it had a lot of reliability and validity as a personality inventory. And so for that reason, the MMPI is the most widely used personality inventory today, because it provides the most reliable and valid empirically deprived data. That is, data that can be observed and analyzed, like quantitative data. Because it places personality characteristics into traits that can be quantified, many people or institutions around the world use it. Now, if you remember from our previous discussions in neuroscience and in learning, our developmental psychology, our personality is directly linked to our temperament. And our temperament, which is our emotional reactivity to outside stimuli, our temperament it's derived from our genetic code, from our parents. So we can observe temperament in babies as early as infancy. Well, our temperament is the foundation that will build into our personality as we experience life, and life impacts our genetic predispositions. So when it comes to feelings of control, whether you have control of a situation or you feel like the situation is controlling you, that can have a huge impact on how your personality develops based on the many experiences you have throughout your life. Now, we've mentioned the locus of control with the external and internal before in social psychology, but we're also going to revisit this in our next unit. So we'll talk about this in more detail later. So back to traits. There are what psychologists call the big five factors, or the big five first personality factors. And if you see here, there are five distinct divisions, or dimensions, rather. There's extroversion, there's neuroticism, there's conscientiousness, agreeableness, and openness. Now, the dimensions include the opposites as well. So if you have high scores in extroversion, then you tend to be outgoing, enthusiastic, and active. If you have low scores in extroversion, then that means you're going to be more likely to be introverted. So you'll be aloof, quiet, and more independent-minded. Whereas if you score highly in the neurotic dimension, then you tend to be prone to stress, worry, and negative emotions. Whereas if you do not suffer from neurosis, then you will be emotionally stable but can take unnecessary risks at times. If you score positively with conscientiousness, then you're organized, self-directed, and successful, but sometimes controlling. But if you're not conscientious, then you're spontaneous, careless, and can be prone to addiction or impulsiveness. Then you have agreeableness. This is trusting, empathetic, and compliant, and you're very slow to anger, very empathetic. However, if you do not have a high sense of agreeableness, then you will have uncooperative and hostile attitudes and personality. If you're open, then you're creative, imaginative, and eccentric. But if not, then your personality will be practical, conventional, skeptical, and rational. Which ones do you think best describe you? We'll talk about it in class. See you guys next time.